Good evening, wherever you are in the world. Perhaps you are lying in bed, eyes heavy after a long day, or maybe you are somewhere quiet, headphones in, waiting for the gentle tide of sleep to carry you away. Some of you are listening in the still hours before dawn, others in the middle of a bustling afternoon, and some in the late night calm when the stars seem closer than usual. Wherever and whenever you are not alone. You are part of a circle of dreamers scattered across the globe who gather here to drift together through stories of mystery, wonder, and forgotten time. If you find comfort in these journeys, you might choose to join us again. You can subscribe if you wish and walk with us on future paths through history, science, and the deep unknown. There is no pressure, just an open invitation, like a lantern glowing quietly at the edge of the forest. For now, you are here, and that is enough. So let us begin. Tonight we touch a question so large, so strange, that it humbles the very ground we stand upon. We are taught that humanity's story begins about 200,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens appeared, spread, and eventually wrote down their histories. 200,000 years, already a vast span of time when compared to a single life or even the rise and fall of kingdoms. And yet, compared to the 4.5 billion years of Earth itself, it is little more than a blink. In this blink, we see cave art painted by flickering torchlight, the carving of stone tools, the birth of agriculture, the building of cities, and the long climb toward the present moment. According to textbooks, all of recorded history, the pyramids, the Roman Empire, the voyages across oceans, fits into the last 5,000 years, a thread on the edge of an immense tapestry. This is the world as science describes it, brief, bright, and recent. But tonight we ask, what if this is not the whole story? What if humanity, or something like us, rose not once, but many times? What if civilizations advanced as ours, or even greater, existed millions of years ago, only to be buried, erased, or scattered by the turning of ages? What if we are not the first to stand here, beneath the stars, building dreams and monuments, only to vanish again into the soil of deep time? Consider the possibility that our knowledge of the past is fragile, that the earth itself is an unreliable archivist. Mountains rise and crumble, oceans advance and retreat, entire continents drift, collide, and sink beneath the waves. After a few thousand years, a city left untended becomes a ruin swallowed by trees. After a few million, even stone can dissolve, leaving almost nothing at all. If another humanity walked this earth long before us, would we even know, or would their traces be hidden in seams of rock, their voices muffled by sediment, their monuments transformed into unrecognizable fragments? This is the contrast we explore together. The certainty of science, which speaks in fossils and radiocarbon, against the whisper of speculation, which wonders what might lie beyond those fragile boundaries, between the comfort of what we know and the haunting allure of what we may never prove. So settle in. Let the rhythm of the words become a current you can float upon. Tonight, we will travel not only backward through time, but sideways into forgotten possibilities, into shadows of civilizations that may have lived, thrived, and perished long before ours. The night is wide, the earth is old, and the story may be stranger than we have dared to believe. To understand what might have been lost, we first need to anchor ourselves in what is known. The story of humanity, as science tells it, begins not in monuments or myths, but in bones and stone. Fossils whisper across millions of years, fragments of jawbones, skulls, and footprints pressed into ancient mud. They tell us that long before us, other beings walked upright, creatures both like and unlike us, Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, each step a little closer to what we recognize in the mirror. According to this record, Homo sapiens, modern humans, emerged in Africa roughly 200,000 years ago. 200,000 years. It sounds vast, but in planetary time, it is only a candle flicker. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Life has thrived for over 3.5 billion. Dinosaurs ruled for 160 million years, while we measure our existence in a mere fraction of that. Imagine opening a library of 1,000 massive volumes, each one chronicling a span of Earth's history, all of recorded human history. Every king and kingdom, every poem, every war would fit only on the final page of the final book. The early chapters of our story are sparse. For tens of thousands of years, humanity lived as hunter-gatherers. Small groups roamed wide landscapes, following herds, fishing rivers, foraging forests. They carried tools shaped from stone, bone, and wood, passed down across generations. These tools left the first durable fingerprints of our kind: flint blades, hand axes, and scrapers scattered across ancient campsites. Fire became a companion, its glow pushing back the night, its warmth anchoring communities in caves and open plains. Then came art. Around 40,000 years ago, humans painted animals on cave walls in places like Chauvet and Lascaux: horses, bison, lions, creatures of immense power captured in ochre and charcoal. These images spoke of minds that imagined, of spirits that wondered, of people who were more than survival alone. In these paintings, science sees the spark of symbolic thought, the beginning of what we might call culture. As millennia passed, humanity began to spread out of Africa. Small groups migrated into the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and eventually Australia and the Americas. This migration unfolded slowly over tens of thousands of years. Fossil evidence, genetic studies, and stone tools traced these winding paths. Wherever humans went, they adapted to deserts, tundras, rainforests, and mountains. Our adaptability became our greatest strength, shaping us into a species that could thrive in nearly every corner of the globe. The next great turning point came just 12,000 years ago, with the dawn of agriculture. At sites like Jericho and Çatalhöyük, humans began to settle, planting seeds, domesticating animals, and building permanent homes. Villages grew into towns, and towns into cities. With agriculture came surplus, and with surplus came specialization. Not everyone had to farm. Some became potters, weavers, priests, or warriors. With surplus also came inequality, hierarchies, and the beginnings of complex social structures. From this foundation, civilizations arose. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians built ziggurats and invented writing. In the Nile Valley, the Egyptians raised pyramids and tracked the stars. In the Indus Valley, cities like Mohenjo-daro thrived with planned streets and drainage. In China, dynasties began their long cycles of rise and fall. In Mesoamerica, Olmec heads loomed, precursors to the Maya and Aztec worlds. Recorded history, as we usually define it, begins here, roughly 5,000 years ago, when symbols on clay tablets and carved stones became lasting words. Science paints this as a steady progression, from foragers to farmers, from villages to cities, from oral traditions to written law. Each step layered upon the last, like bricks rising into a tower. Yet compared to the age of the earth, this tower is a fragile spire. The achievements of the past 12,000 years, a mere whisper when measured against the symphony of planetary history, are all that we can confirm with confidence. Everything before is guesswork, inference, or silence. But silence, as we will see, does not always mean emptiness. The silence before agriculture is filled with shadows, millions of years where our ancestors lived and died, leaving behind only scattered traces: a tooth in the soil, a hearth of blackened stones, a shard of obsidian flaked into a cutting edge. These fragments tell us little of their songs, their stories, or their dreams. To the geologist's eye, they are layers of sediment. To the anthropologist, they are puzzle pieces, incomplete, yet invaluable. From them, we weave a narrative of slow change and growing complexity, though vast stretches remain blank. By the time written history began, many human journeys had already ended. Entire cultures rose and fell without leaving texts to record their names. Archaeologists uncover them in forgotten ruins, stone circles on windswept moors, mounds in the American Midwest, desert cities reclaimed by sand. Each discovery expands our understanding. yet each also reminds us of what we may never know. We walk a narrow path between certainty and speculation, piecing together a mosaic whose edges fade into darkness. Within this mainstream timeline, patterns emerge. Civilizations blossom, peak, and decline. Rome expands across continents, then fractures. The Maya chart the heavens with precision, then abandon their great cities. Dynasties in China cycle between unity and division. Progress is not a straight line, but a rhythm, growth, crisis, renewal, and through it all, humanity remains remarkably resilient, adapting again and again to shifting climates, resource scarcity, and internal turmoil. Science often emphasizes this resilience as evidence of continuity. Despite wars, plagues, and collapses, our species has carried knowledge forward, slowly building the interconnected world we inhabit today. Agriculture, writing, metallurgy, navigation, and science itself form a ladder of advancement. We are in this telling the first species to climb so high in such a short span. 200,000 years from emergence to spaceflight, an astonishing acceleration when compared with the ages that came before. Yet there is a subtle unease in this narrative. If our entire history fits on the last page of the last book, what fills the pages before? We are taught of dinosaurs, ice ages, and tectonic shifts, of a planet endlessly reshaped by fire and water. But what of human-like stories hidden in those earlier volumes? Official record leaves them blank, declaring confidently that Homo sapiens is the only civilization-bearing species, and yet the brevity of our known timeline leaves space for questions. Consider the scale again. If the Earth's age were compressed into a single calendar year, with January 1st marking its birth, humans would appear only in the last half hour of December 31st. All of recorded history would unfold in the final seconds before midnight. The rest of the year is a vast theater where other dramas played out, mostly lost to time. Dinosaurs dominated for months of this metaphorical year. Trilobites ruled seas for even longer. Why should we assume that humanity's brief moment is unique, unrepeatable, and the first of its kind? Mainstream science cautions us. The fossil record, while incomplete, offers no evidence of advanced civilizations before ours. Stone tools endure, bones fossilize, but steel and silicon would not. In millions of years, most traces would vanish. Still, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and even within the accepted timeline, mysteries persist. Göbekli Tepe, for example, rewrote our understanding of the Neolithic, showing complex temple building long before we thought possible. If one discovery can shift the timeline by thousands of years, could others one day shift it by millions? And so, the mainstream story, solid, structured, and evidence-based, anchors us. It gives us a foundation of knowledge from which to leap into speculation. Our known history is brief, yet rich, fragile, yet astonishing. It assures us that we are new arrivals in deep time, children of Earth's final hours. But once that foundation is laid, the question emerges like a whisper in the silence. What if this story is not the whole truth? What if beyond the known page, erased by time and geology, there are chapters of humanity already lived and lost? When we speak of time, we often think in days, years, or centuries. A single lifetime might stretch across 80 or 90 years, enough to see landscapes change, cities rise, and empires falter. History expands that view to millennia, tracing the arcs of civilizations from their births to their ruins. But geology speaks in terms so vast they challenge imagination. It speaks of millions of years, of eons and epochs, of continents moving like slow tides, and mountains rising only to crumble back into the sea. This is deep time, the backdrop against which all life, all stories, and all civilizations unfold. Deep time humbles us because it shows how fleeting human memory truly is. Written records go back only a few thousand years. Oral traditions may stretch tens of thousands, if carefully preserved, yet in geological scales, even 100,000 years is nothing more than a grain of sand in an endless desert. Events that feel impossibly old to us are, in the language of Earth, mere instants, and in those instants, entire legacies can vanish. Consider erosion. Wind, water, and ice are relentless sculptors, shaving down mountains and wearing away stone. A city of marble, abandoned for 10,000 years, would crumble into dust beneath their patient hands. Forests would reclaim avenues, roots prying apart walls, while rivers shifted their courses to drown or expose foundations. Within 100,000 years, the traces would be faint. Within a million, almost gone, unless preserved by accident, buried in ash, entombed in deserts, or frozen in permafrost. The memory of such a city would dissolve. Plate tectonics is an even harsher eraser. The continents themselves drift upon molten foundations, colliding and splitting across millions of years. Land that once bore forests and cities can be swallowed into subduction zones, recycled into magma, and reborn as volcanic arcs. The ocean floor is replaced every 200 million years, meaning that anything built upon it is inevitably erased. Imagine a civilization that flourished along ancient coastlines. Its ports, temples, and harbors would now lie scattered grains fused into stone or lost beneath the churn of seabeds long consumed. Sedimentation, too, both preserves and conceals. Layers of earth accumulate, pressing fossils into stone while crushing fragile artifacts beyond recognition. A delicate carving in wood would vanish quickly. Iron tools might corrode into reddish dust. Even plastics, so enduring in human scales, would break down over millions of years into molecules indistinguishable from natural hydrocarbons. What remains, if anything, is subtle, a chemical anomaly, an isotope out of place, a trace of carbon burned into the sky and recorded in rocks. This is why deep time both fascinates and unsettles us. It reveals that the Earth does not archive neatly. It keeps some secrets while obliterating others, often without bias. The bones of dinosaurs lie preserved in deserts for us to marvel at, yet an entire forest of the same age may vanish without a trace. The record is not complete. It is a lottery of preservation, leaving us to wonder how many stories have been permanently erased. Poets sometimes say that memory is like sand slipping through fingers. In geology, memory is more like stone shattered by storms, reassembled only in fragments. We know enough to glimpse the outlines of the past, but not enough to see the whole picture. Between the certainty of fossils and the silence of erasure lies a vast gulf filled with speculation. In that gulf, the imagination finds fertile ground. If time erases so much, how can we be sure what it has spared? What if entire civilizations rose and fell within that silence, their monuments ground into dust, their voices swallowed by oceans, their very existence hidden in the folds of stone? It is here, in the fragility of memory, that our story deepens. Science acknowledges the gaps, filling them with caution. Yet, for dreamers, the gaps are doorways, and once the possibility is opened that deep time may have erased more than it preserved, we begin to glimpse the scale of what might lie beyond our known history. The deeper we gaze into Earth's past, the more obvious its selective memory becomes. The fossil record, though invaluable, is riddled with absences. Only a small fraction of organisms ever fossilize. Most vanish without leaving a trace. Entire species lived and died unrecorded, their bones scattered and dissolved, their presence detectable only through fleeting hints in DNA or chemistry. If nature forgets the bodies of countless creatures, how much easier it must be to forget the fragile signatures of culture and civilization. Even the mightiest monuments are fragile when judged against millions of years. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza, over 4,000 years old and still standing. To us, it feels eternal. Yet experts estimate that in another 100,000 years, without maintenance, it would be unrecognizable. In a million, it would be gone, reduced to scattered rubble, absorbed into the sands. The Eiffel Tower, the skyscrapers of New York, the satellites in orbit, none are built to endure the grinding patience of geological time. What we call permanent is in truth ephemeral. Contrast this fragility with the immense endurance of Earth's natural cycles. Mountain ranges rise, weather away, and rise again. Oceans expand and contract, carving shorelines anew. Glaciers grind continents, leaving behind valleys and lakes. These processes operate so slowly that a lifetime cannot perceive them. Yet across millions of years, they erase with ruthless efficiency. Deep time, in this sense, is both artist and censor, shaping the earth while silencing its temporary inhabitants. Knowledge nuggets sharpen this contrast. Radiometric dating tells us that Homo sapiens appeared only 200,000 years ago, while the last supercontinent, Pangaea, broke apart nearly 200 million years ago. In that gap, oceans opened and mountains crumbled, leaving little stable surface for fragile remains. What civilizations, if any, could survive such relentless change? The probability of preservation is slim, the chance of discovery slimmer still. And yet, even slim chances can spark imagination. We marvel at the survival of fossils like Archaeopteryx, caught in the fine grain of ancient limestone, or the delicate imprints of ferns pressed into coal. If such fragile forms endure, is it impossible that some artifact of a lost age might also wait in stone? A shard of alloy, an unexplained isotope, a structure buried beneath layers of silt. Science demands extraordinary evidence, but deep time ensures that such evidence, if it exists, would be vanishingly rare. This is why scholars describe the human record as compressed. Our story, as we know it, could fit on the last page of a 1,000-volume book. All else is the domain of geology, biology, and speculation. We peer back through windows left ajar, fossil beds, ice cores, and layered rocks, while most of the past remains behind closed doors. Each discovery widens the view slightly, but the vast expanse of time ensures we will never see the whole panorama. For those listening tonight, drifting towards sleep, there is a quiet comfort in this mystery. If deep time is so immense that even continents are temporary, then our worries and struggles are gentler still, ripples on the surface of an endless sea, and within that sea, the possibility remains that we are not alone in history, that others walked these paths, dreamed their own dreams, and were erased before we could know them. So when we ask what might have come before us, we are really asking what Earth has chosen to remember and what it has forgotten. The fragility of memory reminds us that silence does not prove absence. It proves only that time is vast and we are brief, and in that briefness lies both humility and wonder as we turn from the known toward the speculative, stepping into the possibility that humanity may not be as new or as singular as we believe. Among the most intriguing ideas in modern science is one that blurs the line between sober geology and speculative fiction. It is called the Silurian hypothesis. It's a thought experiment proposed by NASA climatologist Gavin Schmidt and astrophysicist Adam Frank in 2018. Its name is a playful nod to a race of intelligent reptiles from the British television series Doctor Who. But the question it raises is far from whimsical. It asks, if an advanced civilization had existed on Earth millions of years ago, how would we know? Would any evidence of it remain today? The hypothesis begins with a sobering premise. The geological record is incomplete. As we explored in the last section, deep time is a vast eraser. Fossils are rare, and human artifacts rarer still. Over millions of years, most evidence of our existence would vanish. This leads to a haunting thought. What if it already has? Schmidt and Frank did not argue that ancient civilizations actually existed. Rather, they explored how one might detect them if they had. Imagine a species, not human, not necessarily even mammalian, that achieved industrial sophistication long before us. Perhaps it built cities, mined resources, burned fuels, and altered its environment. If so, what traces would remain? Would we recognize them, or would they blend into the natural background of Earth's geologic record? The scientists proposed that the clearest signature of industrial civilization might not be monuments or artifacts, but chemistry. When humanity burns fossil fuels, we release vast amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This leaves a distinctive fingerprint in the geological record, visible in the isotopes of carbon trapped in sediments. Future geologists, millions of years from now, would be able to detect this spike long after our buildings crumble. Likewise, synthetic compounds such as plastics, pesticides, and industrial chemicals might persist in altered forms, diffused into soils and rocks. These chemical ghosts could outlast our physical creations. The Silurian hypothesis reminds us that civilizations, if they rise and fall over millions of years, may leave their mark not in ruins, but in residue. A civilization's true legacy might be a thin layer of unusual chemistry in the strata, a geological scar hidden among the pages of Earth's immense history. But here lies the challenge. Earth has experienced many natural chemical anomalies. Global warming events, carbon spikes, and even mass extinctions occurred long before humans appeared, around 56 million years ago. During the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, global temperatures surged and carbon levels rose dramatically. This event left behind isotope signatures in rock, remarkably similar to what our own industrial age is producing now. Yet this ancient spike is attributed to natural causes, volcanic activity, methane release, or shifting oceans. Could we be certain that it was not, instead, the fingerprint of an earlier civilization? Mainstream science insists on natural explanations, and rightly so. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. But the similarity between industrial era signatures and ancient anomalies is tantalizing. If our own civilization were to collapse today, future geologists would struggle to distinguish between natural and artificial causes of the chemical disruptions we have left behind. They might see only a carbon spike, shrug, and attribute it to volcanoes or climate shifts. In that ambiguity lies the heart of the Silurian hypothesis. Absence of proof is not proof of absence. The thought experiment also invites us to consider what else might remain. Beyond carbon, Schmidt and Frank pointed to unusual isotopes created by nuclear activity. Radioactive elements used in weapons or reactors decay, but their daughter isotopes linger, forming subtle patterns in sediments. If a past civilization mastered nuclear technology, faint traces might still ripple through rock layers. Likewise, industrial mining could leave peculiar concentrations of metals in ancient soils, signatures that differ from natural distributions. And yet, even these traces are vulnerable to deep time. Tectonic recycling, erosion, and metamorphosis grind records into dust. The further back we look, the more difficult detection becomes. A civilization that lived 10,000 years ago might still be faintly visible. One that lived 1 million years ago would be nearly impossible to detect. Beyond 10 million, the odds shrink to vanishing. Still, the thought remains: improbable does not mean impossible. The Silurian hypothesis is not intended as proof, but as perspective. It asks us to broaden our imagination and recognize the fragility of evidence. If we seek to find other civilizations, on Earth or beyond, we must look not only for ruins, but for residues, not only for artifacts, but for anomalies. Our own industrial age offers the template. If aliens visited Earth 50 million years from now, they would not see the pyramids or the skyscrapers. They would see chemical spikes, plastic traces, and isotope ratios etched into stone that, more than any monument, would be our message to the future. And so we circle back to the central mystery. If that is true of us, could it not also be true of others? Could another civilization, long vanished, have left only subtle scars in rock, scars we mistake for natural events? Science offers skepticism, but imagination keeps the question alive. If the Silurian hypothesis feels unsettling, it is because it forces us to confront our own impermanence. We imagine ourselves as builders of lasting legacies, yet this thought experiment reminds us that we too will be forgotten. In 1 million years, the cities we cherish may be gone. In 10 million, even our greatest achievements could be indistinguishable from natural formations. The unsettling truth is that we might vanish as thoroughly as any imagined predecessors, our presence reduced to a brief, ambiguous signal in the rock. This leads us to an uncomfortable question. If another civilization had existed, how would we distinguish its legacy from nature's own patterns? For example, the Paleocene Eocene thermal maximum is seen as a natural climate event, but its carbon release and temperature spike mirror what we see today. Could we be mistaking evidence of others for the Earth's own volcanic or biological cycles? Mainstream scientists resist such speculation, yet the parallel is striking. What we label as natural may sometimes mask the fingerprints of intelligence. The hypothesis also reframes how we view the search for life elsewhere. If we struggle to prove our own uniqueness on Earth, how should we approach exoplanets light years away? Astronomers often look for biosignatures, oxygen in the atmosphere, water vapor, methane, but Schmidt and Frank suggest that we should also look for technosignatures, evidence of industry, pollutants, or isotopic anomalies that cannot easily be explained by natural processes. In this way, the Silurian hypothesis extends beyond Earth, offering a lens for the cosmic search for civilizations past and present. Philosophically, it touches something deeper. Human history is often told as a march of progress, a line from caves to cathedrals, from pyramids to particle accelerators. But the Silurian hypothesis suggests a cycle rather than a line. Perhaps civilizations bloom and wither repeatedly, each eroded by time until only subtle echoes remain. We could be the first, or merely the latest. The humility of this possibility tempers the pride of modern achievement. Knowledge nuggets emerge from considering what traces endure. Plastics, for instance, break down into microplastics but do not vanish entirely. Over millions of years, they may be transformed into novel hydrocarbon deposits, puzzling future geologists. Our vast networks of concrete, if buried, could form unnatural stone layers. Even chicken bones, billions produced annually, might fossilize in numbers unmatched by any other species, creating what some scientists already call the chicken line in Earth's strata. These examples show how our present is shaping a geological legacy, one that could endure long after memory fades. And yet, for all that might endure, ambiguity remains. A layer of plastics might be mistaken for unusual organic deposits. A spike in carbon could resemble volcanic activity. Isotopes from nuclear reactions could blur into natural radioactivity. The Earth does not label its pages, and so interpretation becomes uncertain. A geologist, 50 million years from now, might study our epoch and never guess that it once teemed with skyscrapers, satellites, and global networks. They might see only a thin, curious band and move on. This ambiguity is what makes the Silurian hypothesis both haunting and beautiful. It does not claim evidence of forgotten civilizations. It simply shows us how fragile our own is. It tells us that if we wish to be remembered, we must think not in decades or centuries, but in geological terms. Even then, the odds are against us. The Earth's memory is selective, and deep time is patient. For listeners drifting into rest, there is a strange comfort here. Our struggles, our triumphs, our fears, all will pass. The Earth has seen countless ages before us, and will see countless after. Whether we are the first or one among many, we are part of an immense story, a single chapter in a book that spans billions of years. The Silurian hypothesis reminds us that our place is both fragile and wondrous. Fragile, because evidence of us may vanish. Wondrous, because for now we are here, aware enough to ask these questions at all. And so, as we close this exploration, we return to the central theme. What is remembered and what is forgotten? If others walked this path long before us, they are hidden by time's erasure. If we are the first, we too will one day fade. Either way, the mystery remains. A quiet hum beneath the surface of stone, inviting us to wonder. The Silurian hypothesis leaves us not with answers, but with perspective. That deep time is vast, that memory is fragile, and that the possibility of forgotten civilizations lingers like an echo just beyond reach. If deep time erases, then our search for forgotten civilizations depends on what it occasionally spares. Among the fragments that survive, some discoveries inspire both wonder and controversy. The so-called out-of-place artifacts, or OPARTs. These are objects and anomalies that seem to contradict the accepted timeline of human history, hinting at least to the imagination that something more may have existed before us. In South Africa, for instance, miners have unearthed small metallic spheres from ancient rock formations. Some of these spheres are perfectly round, grooved with parallel lines as though they had been machined. Geologists date the surrounding rock to nearly 3 billion years old. The mainstream explanation is that these spheres are natural concretions formed by mineral deposits under unusual conditions. Yet their symmetry, their strange markings, leave space for speculation. Could they be relics of a forgotten technology, or merely nature's uncanny ability to mimic design? Elsewhere, footprints appear where they should not. In Glen Rose, Texas, reports surfaced of human-like tracks pressed alongside those of dinosaurs. The scientific consensus attributes these to misidentified impressions, erosion, and natural shapes, mistaken for human prints. But for those who dream of lost worlds, such anomalies whisper of civilizations walking paths unimaginably ancient, sharing landscapes with creatures long extinct. Then there is the Baghdad Battery, a clay jar containing a copper cylinder and iron rod dated to around 2,000 years ago. Many archaeologists argue it was likely a storage vessel, perhaps used for scrolls or religious rituals. Yet experiments have shown it could generate a small electric current when filled with an acidic liquid. Was it a primitive battery? If so, what purpose did it serve? For mainstream historians, it fits comfortably within human experimentation. For speculators, it becomes a clue. If electricity was stumbled upon in antiquity, what else might have been? The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera, adds another layer. Built over 2,000 years ago, it is an intricate device of gears and dials, capable of predicting eclipses and tracking celestial cycles. Its sophistication rivals clocks, built a millennium later. Mainstream historians marvel at the genius of Greek engineering, but some see it as an anomaly too advanced for its age. Was it a rediscovery of knowledge once held and lost? Could such moments hint at deeper legacies buried by time? Each of these cases carries mainstream explanations, often persuasive, sometimes definitive. Yet the human imagination thrives in the gaps. If even one artifact slipped through from a forgotten age, it could rewrite history. But if all are natural or misinterpreted, they still serve as symbols of how eager we are to glimpse stories beyond our known past. They stand as invitations to wonder. What might we find next, hidden in stone, waiting to be unearthed? Some anomalies take stranger forms. Enigmatic objects found in geological layers that seem impossibly old for human craftsmanship. In 1889, workers in Nampa, Idaho, reported finding a tiny clay figurine resembling a woman at a depth suggesting it was over 2 million years old. Mainstream science explains it as an intrusive artifact, something modern that slipped into older deposits through cracks. Yet for those who long for lost stories, it remains a puzzle. If genuine, it would rewrite everything we know about human presence in deep antiquity. In Russia, near the Ural Mountains, discoveries have included microscopic spirals made of tungsten and molybdenum, dated by some estimates to tens of thousands of years ago. The mainstream interpretation points toward modern contamination, yet speculation thrives. Who could have crafted such intricate components before the rise of metallurgy as we know it? Even natural formations invite debate. The so-called London hammer, a 19th century hammer encased in stone, is often presented as proof of ancient technology. Geologists argue that the stone around it formed through a process of concretion in relatively recent times, encasing a modern tool in mineral growth. Yet the hammer has become iconic in speculative circles, a symbol of how everyday objects can gain mythic weight when lifted from their expected context. Then there are sites where scale itself seems anomalous. The megaliths of Baalbek in Lebanon, some weighing over 1,000 tons, stretch the limits of ancient engineering. Mainstream archaeology attributes them to extraordinary human effort, ingenious techniques, and the will to build, yet their sheer size inspires alternative interpretations, lost technologies, forgotten machines, or knowledge passed down from a civilization far older than our texts record. Such interpretations are not endorsed by scholars, but they persist in the cultural imagination. It is important to emphasize that each anomaly, when studied carefully, usually finds natural or mundane explanations. Geological processes are often stranger than we imagine, capable of producing forms that mimic design. Human activity, too, stretches further into antiquity than once thought, making some seemingly impossible finds less mysterious when placed in context. Still, the persistence of these anomalies in public fascination speaks to something deeper, our yearning to connect with a past larger than what textbooks allow. These clues, whether misunderstood or misinterpreted, become more than objects. They are mirrors for our imagination. They force us to confront the possibility that the earth may hold secrets beyond the reach of certainty. For insomniacs listening now, drifting toward the border of dreams, they function as whispers from the stone itself, reminders that history is not always as tidy as we are told. Beyond individual artifacts, entire landscapes sometimes suggest puzzles that strain mainstream explanations. Consider the enigmatic structures of Pumapunku in Bolivia. Here, massive stone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, lie scattered across a high-altitude plain. They are cut with striking precision, their edges forming near-perfect right angles, and their surfaces smooth as though machined. Archaeologists attribute the work to the Tiwanaku culture around 1,500 years ago, using stone tools, abrasives, and remarkable ingenuity. Yet for many, the craftsmanship hints at technologies lost or forgotten. Could these be echoes of knowledge passed down from an earlier, unrecorded age? The Nazca lines of Peru add another layer of mystery. Gigantic geoglyphs carved into desert soil depict animals, spirals, and geometric patterns, visible only from above. Mainstream archaeology explains them as ritual creations by the Nazca culture between 500 BCE and 500 CE, designed to be walked upon or symbolically viewed from nearby hills. Still, their scale tempts the imagination. Why make art so vast that only the sky can truly behold it? To some, they represent ceremonial devotion. To others, they are signals, messages left across epochs, or remnants of older knowledge reborn. In India, the megalithic site of Hampi preserves colossal stone architecture, boulders stacked with uncanny balance, temples carved with celestial motifs. Similarly, at Nan Madol in Micronesia, basalt logs form an entire city built upon the sea, sometimes referred to as the Venice of the Pacific. Archaeologists situate these within human ingenuity and regional history, yet alternative voices point to their complexity as signs of techniques not fully understood, possibly inherited from ages far older than the cultures credited. Even geological anomalies invite speculation. In coal seams and sedimentary rock layers, reports occasionally emerge of objects resembling nails, chains, or imprints of manufactured shapes. Most are dismissed as natural formations, pyrite nodules, mineral veins, or erosion patterns, but once photographed and circulated, they capture the imagination. They suggest a tantalizing possibility that nature and civilization may sometimes blur in ways difficult to separate, leaving us forever uncertain about where one ends and the other begins. These sites and objects, even when explained by mainstream scholarship, serve an important role in the collective story. They remind us that history is not a closed book, but an evolving dialogue. For every definitive answer, there are questions that linger, and for every anomaly explained, another emerges to take its place, fueling the sense that the earth still holds secrets just beyond our reach. In this sense, anomalous artifacts become less about proving lost civilizations and more about preserving wonder. They are invitations to explore, to imagine, and to stay awake, if only a little longer. wondering what truths lie hidden in stone, waiting patiently to be uncovered. Perhaps the most enduring power of anomalous artifacts lies not in their material reality, but in the questions they ignite. When a grooved sphere or a strange imprint appears in an ancient layer of stone, we are reminded of how narrow our window into the past truly is. Whether explained as natural curiosities or genuine enigmas, they reveal how little survives from deep antiquity and how much room remains for imagination. Mainstream science approaches these artifacts with healthy skepticism. It seeks explanations rooted in geology, archaeology, and chemistry. And often, those explanations are persuasive. Minerals grow in patterns that mimic tools. Erosion carves forms that look intentional. Human activity extends further back than once thought, making some impossible finds merely early examples of ingenuity. Yet for every resolution, new mysteries arise. The debate itself becomes part of the story, a dialogue between certainty and possibility. For those listening in the quiet of night, these artifacts serve another purpose. They awaken wonder. If even a single one were genuine evidence of a forgotten civilization, the implications would be staggering, would mean that humanity, or something very much like it, had risen before, achieved feats we struggle to explain, and then vanished into silence. But even if none are authentic, the yearning they stir is real. They speak to our desire to belong to a story larger than the few thousand years we can clearly see. Consider again the poetic framing. Our known history is a single page on the final volume of a 1,000-volume saga. Out-of-place artifacts, whether genuine or not, are glimpses of the pages we cannot read. They remind us that history is not flat and linear, but textured, full of erasures, rewritings, and mysteries left unsolved. In their ambiguity, they open space for the speculative journey this documentary invites you to take. As we move forward, we will step from the physical artifacts into the realm of myth and memory. For while stone and metal offer puzzles, human stories passed through generations, carried in ritual and legend, hold their own anomalies. And sometimes, myths preserve truths that archaeology has yet to rediscover. From Atlantis to lost continents, from global floods to golden ages, the next layer of our exploration shifts from the objects hidden in rock to the stories etched into human imagination. For now, let the thought linger. The earth may keep secrets we are not yet ready to uncover. And in those secrets lies the haunting possibility that we are not the first, nor perhaps the last, to build, to dream, and to be forgotten. When we leave behind the speculative artifacts and step into the realm of recorded myth and archaeology, we encounter another kind of enigma, lost civilizations within the range of human memory. These are not tales from billions of years ago, but from thousands, where history and legend overlap. They remind us that even in relatively recent times, entire cultures have risen, flourished, and then disappeared, sometimes leaving behind magnificent ruins, other times only whispers in myth. Take the story of Atlantis, first told by the philosopher Plato. He described a powerful island nation that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of catastrophe. To mainstream historians, Atlantis is allegory, a moral tale about hubris and the fall of great powers. Yet its grip on the imagination has endured for over 2 millennia. Generations have searched for it in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and even under Antarctica's ice. Whether metaphor or memory, Atlantis has become a symbol of forgotten greatness, raising the tantalizing possibility that Plato preserved echoes of a real event dimly remembered. Beyond Atlantis lies the legend of Lemuria, supposed lost continent in the Indian or Pacific Ocean. 19th century scientists once speculated about such a landmass to explain the distribution of lemurs and other species. Though modern plate tectonics dismissed the idea, Lemuria remained alive in occult and spiritual traditions, reimagined as the cradle of an ancient people. Here again, a discredited hypothesis transformed into a cultural myth, suggesting that the hunger for lost worlds is stronger than the evidence that denies them. Yet history offers us concrete examples that parallel these myths. Angkor, once the capital of the Khmer Empire in Cambodia, was abandoned centuries ago and reclaimed by jungle. For centuries, its stone temples lay hidden until rediscovered by explorers in the 19th century. Similarly, the cities of the Indus Valley Civilization, Mohenjo-daro, and Harappa were unknown to modern scholars until the 20th century. Their sophisticated urban planning, drainage systems, and trade networks revealed a culture far more advanced than previously imagined, lost to history for millennia. In South America, the city of Machu Picchu sat concealed atop an Andean ridge until 1911, when Hiram Bingham brought it to international attention. To local people, it was never entirely forgotten, but to the outside world, it emerged suddenly, like a ghost of a vanished age. These rediscoveries show how fragile our awareness of history can be. Even monumental cities can vanish, hidden by forests, deserts, or seas, waiting quietly until chance reveals them again. If so much can disappear within a span of centuries, how much more could be lost across thousands or millions of years? The rediscovery of known civilizations becomes a mirror for deeper speculation. For each Angkor, each Mohenjo-daro, we are reminded that memory is shallow and that the earth may still conceal stories far stranger than any legend. The rediscovery of forgotten cities forces us to confront how easily human achievements can vanish. Consider the Maya civilization, which built towering pyramids, complex calendars, and sprawling urban centers across Central America. For centuries after their decline, vast jungle canopies swallowed their cities, leaving only small hints visible to wandering eyes. It was not until the advent of aerial surveys and LiDAR technology that the full extent of their civilization emerged. Tens of thousands of hidden structures mapped beneath the forest. What we once thought of as scattered ruins proved instead to be the skeleton of an immense, interconnected world. If such complexity could be lost for mere centuries, what might be hidden beneath deeper layers of time? The deserts of the Middle East tell a similar story. Ancient Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization, birthed writing, law codes, and ziggurats that still loom over the sands. Yet many Mesopotamian cities remain unexcavated, their ruins cloaked beneath dunes or modern towns. Entire empires, once vibrant, are now reduced to half-deciphered tablets and broken foundations. Even here, in one of the most studied regions of the world, vast portions of the past remain buried, perhaps permanently. Africa, too, carries forgotten legacies. The once thriving city of Great Zimbabwe was long shrouded in mystery. When Europeans first encountered its stone walls in the 19th century, they refused to believe that local peoples had built it, spinning tales of Phoenicians or lost tribes instead. Only later did archaeology confirm its African origin, reminding us that prejudice and assumption can erase history as effectively as time. The ruins remain, powerful testimony to a culture unjustly forgotten. In the Mediterranean, the Minoan civilization flourished on Crete more than 3,000 years ago. They built palaces, traded across the seas, and produced art that still dazzles. Yet a combination of volcanic eruption and societal collapse brought their world to an end. For centuries, their achievements were known only through fragments, until rediscovery revealed a sophisticated maritime culture. Their memory lingered faintly in myths of King Minos and the labyrinth, proof that stories sometimes preserve faint echoes of lost peoples. These examples highlight a sobering truth. Even within the relatively short span of human history, civilizations can vanish almost completely. Myth, ruins, or scattered objects may survive, but the full breadth of their lives, their songs, languages, and daily struggles are often gone forever. If such amnesia happens within a few thousand years, then the silence of millions stretches into something unfathomable. To the dreamer listening now, perhaps resting in the quiet of night, this thought is both haunting and comforting. Haunting because it reveals how fragile memory truly is. Comforting because it assures us that forgetting is natural. The earth does not keep everything. It selects, it erases, it transforms. In this pattern, our own civilization is but another chapter, subject to the same tides of remembrance and oblivion. Some lost civilizations were hidden not by forests or deserts, but by the ocean itself. Off the coast of India, near Dwarka, divers have found submerged structures that some researchers believe resemble ancient cities, while mainstream archaeology interprets much of this as natural formations. The discoveries stir echoes of myth. Dwarka, the legendary city of Krishna, said to have sunk beneath the waves. Similarly, off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni Monument lies beneath the sea. Massive stone terraces and steps carved into shapes that resemble pyramids. Geologists argue these are natural rock formations shaped by currents and erosion, but some insist they bear the hallmarks of human design. In both cases, the sea hides as much as it reveals, blurring the line between nature and culture. The Sahara Desert, too, holds mysteries. But beneath its sands lie remnants of once flourishing settlements from times when the region was fertile and green. Rock art in places like Tassili Niger depicts herds of cattle, hunters, and rivers flowing across what is now an endless, arid expanse. These images remind us that landscapes themselves change, erasing civilizations by transforming their environments. What was once habitable becomes hostile, forcing people to migrate and leaving only faint traces behind. Another striking example is Petra, the rose-red city carved into cliffs in modern Jordan, once a thriving hub of trade for the Nabateans. It was eventually abandoned, hidden within rugged mountains, until rediscovered by a Swiss explorer in the 19th century. Today, it is iconic, yet for centuries, it lay silent, forgotten by the world. The fact that such a monumental city could be lost within recorded history underscores how fragile cultural memory can be. Even great metropolises are not immune. The city of Troy, immortalized in Homer's epics, was long dismissed as myth until excavations in the late 19th century revealed its ruins beneath layers of earth. For generations, scholars doubted its reality, considering it a poetic invention. Yet here, archaeology vindicated legend. Troy's rediscovery showed that myths can sometimes preserve kernels of truth, distorted by time but anchored in real places. What these stories share is the theme of rediscovery. Civilizations we once considered mythical or irrelevant re-emerge, reminding us of the fragility of knowledge. Each recovery humbles us, revealing how much of the world's story remains hidden. For every Troy or Petra we uncover, countless others may lie unseen, awaiting the right moment to surface again. For the listener drifting through these words, this thought can feel like a gentle pull between certainty and possibility. We know much, but not all, and in that gap lies room to imagine not only lost civilizations we have found, but those still veiled in silence. If memory fades so easily within the short span of human history, then how much might be forgotten across the expanse of deep time? The theme of lost civilizations is not confined to ruins and rediscoveries. It extends into the myths and oral traditions that cultures carry across generations. Flood stories, for instance, appear in nearly every corner of the world, from the biblical tale of Noah to the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, from Hindu accounts of Manu's rescue to indigenous American traditions of waters rising to cleanse the land. Mainstream scholarship interprets these as reflections of local floods, allegories of renewal, or shared archetypes born of human imagination. Yet to some, their universality hints at a deeper memory, perhaps of great deluges that erased earlier societies. In Central and South America, myths of golden ages and vanished peoples often accompany ruins. The Inca spoke of earlier builders, the Viracochas, who raised cyclopean walls before the Inca themselves. In the Mediterranean, Greeks told of the Titanomachy, wars of gods and giants that toppled earlier orders. In Polynesia, chants speak of lands swallowed by the sea. Each story, while mythic, invites speculation. Are they metaphors or distant echoes of civilizations whose names are now lost? Even within recorded history, civilizations vanish with little explanation. The decline of the Indus Valley civilization remains mysterious. Did climate change drive its people away, or was it gradual cultural transformation? The collapse of the Mycenaeans plunged Greece into centuries of darkness before classical culture emerged. The sudden end of the Olmecs left colossal stone heads but few written records. Each disappearance leaves a silence that archaeology tries to fill, but never completely. Into that silence, imagination whispers. What binds all these stories together is fragility. Civilizations appear mighty in their own time, but even the strongest can fall, and when they do, memory fades quickly. A few stones, a handful of inscriptions, or a lingering myth may remain, but the richness of daily life, their languages, music, and dreams often dissolves forever. This is the lesson that known history offers us. Forgetting is not an exception, but the rule. For the insomniac listening now, this realization carries a paradoxical calm. On the one hand, it humbles us. Our own age, with its skyscrapers and satellites, is not immune to the tides of forgetting. On the other, it comforts us. We are part of a pattern as old as humanity itself, a cycle of remembering and forgetting that binds us to those who came before. And if myths and ruins remind us of how much we have lost, they also invite us to imagine what else might lie waiting, hidden beneath forests, deserts, or seas, waiting for a new dawn of discovery. Civilizations rise with effort and imagination, but nature holds the power to erase them in a single stroke. Throughout Earth's history, cataclysms have acted as reset buttons, wiping away species, reshaping landscapes, and forcing survivors into new beginnings. In mainstream science, these events are etched in the fossil record and the scars of geology. But for those who ponder lost civilizations, they carry a haunting implication: what might have been destroyed beyond recall. One of the most dramatic examples is the Younger Dryas event, roughly 12,800 years ago. At the end of the last ice age, global temperatures suddenly plunged, halting the warming that had been underway. Some scientists argue it was triggered by meltwater disrupting ocean currents, while others propose a cosmic cause, perhaps fragments of a comet striking Earth. Whatever its origin, the Younger Dryas brought centuries of cold and drought to early humans experimenting with agriculture. It was a blow that reshaped survival. Entire populations shifted, adapted, or perished. For speculative thinkers, this abrupt freeze also raises the possibility: if an earlier civilization had existed at the Ice Age's end, could this event have erased its traces? Even more devastating was the eruption of the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia around 74,000 years ago. Geological evidence suggests it expelled thousands of cubic kilometers of ash, enough to blanket large parts of Asia and trigger a volcanic winter lasting years. Some genetic studies once suggested humanity's population shrank to as few as several thousand breeding individuals during this time, though the scale of the bottleneck remains debated. Still, Toba demonstrates how fragile human survival can be when nature unleashes its fury. Imagine if there had been a civilization at that time, not just scattered hunter-gatherers, but something more advanced. A catastrophe of this scale could have erased nearly all evidence, leaving behind only silence and ash. Asteroid impacts remind us of even greater destructive force. 66 million years ago, the Chicxulub impact in Mexico ended the reign of the dinosaurs. A rock barely 10 kilometers wide triggered firestorms, global darkness, and mass extinction. If such an event struck today, it would obliterate our cities, industries, and technologies, leaving only faint geochemical signatures. Over millions of years, even those would fade, reduced to a thin line of iridium-rich sediment. This is how cataclysms function, as reset buttons. They do not just topple civilizations, they rewrite the conditions of life itself. For the insomniac listener, these events are sobering, but also strangely soothing. They remind us that endings are woven into Earth's design. Nothing, not even the mightiest empire or species, endures forever. Yet within destruction lies renewal. The extinction of the dinosaurs opened the path for mammals, and eventually humans, to thrive. The collapse of one age clears space for another. Catastrophes are not only erasers, they are also authors, drafting new chapters in the story of life. And so, when we imagine forgotten civilizations, we must imagine them living under the same threat we do. Their monuments vulnerable to fire, flood, and ice. Their stories dependent on fragile continuities. A single cataclysm could have reset the stage, leaving us as the latest actors unaware of those who played before. While volcanic winters and asteroid strikes dominate the imagination, other cataclysms unfold with slower violence, reshaping civilizations over centuries. Climate change, for example, has repeatedly acted as a silent reset button. Around 4,200 years ago, a prolonged drought known as the 4.2 kiloyear event struck large parts of the world. Rivers shrank, crops failed, and empires faltered. In Mesopotamia, the Akkadian Empire collapsed. In Egypt, the Old Kingdom waned. Across Asia, cities were abandoned as rains disappeared. For those who lived through it, the change must have felt apocalyptic, even if it left behind no single scar like an asteroid crater. Instead, its legacy is written in patterns of collapse, migration, and forgotten cities swallowed by dust. Floods, too, can erase. As glaciers melted at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose more than 100 meters, drowning coastal plains where humans had once lived. Archaeologists suspect that vast stretches of land now beneath the ocean were once fertile habitats, supporting thriving communities. Doggerland, a now submerged landscape that once connected Britain to mainland Europe, is one such example. Fishing trawlers have pulled up bones, tools, and remnants of forests from its depths. Imagine how many other Doggerlands lie hidden. Entire chapters of early human life submerged forever. Myths of great floods echoed in Mesopotamian tablets, biblical tales, and Hindu scripture may well reflect these memories of rising seas. Whether symbolic or literal, such stories remind us that water is as much a destroyer as it is a giver of life. Earthquakes and tsunamis also leave their mark. The eruption of Thera around 1600 BCE devastated the Aegean world, producing a massive tsunami that battered Crete and contributed to the decline of the Minoan civilization. In Japan, coastal villages have been repeatedly swept away, leaving little but oral traditions and stones carved with warnings. These sudden, violent resets scatter lives and erase settlements, forcing survivors to rebuild anew, while the memory of what was lost fades with each generation. Mainstream science records these cataclysms carefully, piecing together their scale and impact through geology, ice cores, and archaeology. Yet for the speculative mind, they raise another question. How many times could civilizations have risen and fallen without leaving us a trace, erased by fire, flood, or ice? If one small island kingdom like Thera's could vanish almost without record, then what might have disappeared in ages further back, when cataclysms were greater and memory less secure? The thought is humbling. Cataclysms remind us that our place is never guaranteed. They reduce certainty to fragility, stability to illusion. For listeners resting now, drifting between wakefulness and sleep, this truth carries a paradoxical comfort. If civilizations can be undone so easily, then permanence is not the measure of meaning. What matters is the brief span we are given, the stories we write while the stage is ours. And if others have written before us, their scripts erased by time, then perhaps our own story is one verse in an endless cycle of creation and loss. Some cataclysms are sudden, others unfold in a slow inevitability, but all serve the same role. They press the reset button on history. When archaeologists and geologists trace these moments, they see not only destruction but transformation. What disappears is balanced by what emerges. Yet in that balance, civilizations can be forgotten, erased so thoroughly that only legends remain. Consider the collapse of the Bronze Age around 1200 BCE. Across the eastern Mediterranean, great kingdoms fell. The Hittites vanished, Mycenaean palaces burned, Egyptian power waned, and trade networks dissolved. Scholars debate the cause: climate change, famine, invasions, or internal strife. Likely it was all of these, converging in a perfect storm. The result was centuries of darkness, where writing diminished, cities shrank, and memory fractured. For generations afterward, people told stories of lost heroes and great wars, echoes that may have inspired Homer's epics. Here we see how catastrophe does not always arrive as a single explosion. Sometimes it arrives as a chain of stresses that topple entire worlds. Volcanic eruptions, asteroid strikes, and rising seas are visible scars, but there are subtler catastrophes too. Diseases have repeatedly reshaped human history. The Black Death in the 14th century erased entire communities, killing perhaps a third of Europe's population. Ancient plagues swept through Rome, China, and beyond, collapsing empires and resetting economies. For speculative minds, such pandemics serve as reminders. What if earlier civilizations, unknown to us, succumbed to diseases so devastating that their traces were wiped out before they could leave enduring marks? The pattern across all these examples is rhythm, growth, collapse, renewal. Nature enforces cycles that no empire can escape. The earth does not mourn what is lost. It simply resets, allowing new forms of life and culture to rise. To the dreamer listening now, drifting in the half-light of sleep, this rhythm may feel strangely familiar, like the breath itself. Inhale, exhale, repeat. Civilizations breathe too, rising and falling in time with the planet's own pulse. Mainstream science frames cataclysms as agents of evolution. They prune the tree of life, forcing survivors into new paths. Without the Chicxulub asteroid, mammals might never have dominated. Without ice age fluctuations, humans might never have adapted to so many environments. From one perspective, catastrophe is tragedy. From another, it is opportunity. Both views are true, depending on where in the cycle one stands. For speculative thinkers, this duality opens the door to wonder. If earlier civilizations existed, perhaps they too were pruned by catastrophe. Their stories may be gone, but their role in shaping the conditions for our rise remains hidden but essential. Just as the dinosaurs unknowingly prepared the stage for mammals, forgotten peoples might have prepared the stage for us. Their memory dissolved, but their influence embedded in the world we inherited. And so, cataclysms remind us not only of endings, but of continuity. They whisper that life persists, that something always survives to tell the story anew. Yet they also remind us that survival does not guarantee remembrance. For every city rediscovered, countless others may be lost forever, erased by fire, flood, or time. If cataclysms reveal how fragile civilizations are, the fragility of technology shows how fleeting their creations can be. When we imagine the ruins of the future, it is tempting to picture towering skyscrapers still standing, satellites orbiting above, or machines buried in the soil. Yet in truth, most of what defines our age is astonishingly temporary. Stone endures, metal rusts, plastics break down into fragments, paper turns to dust, digital files, the very records of our thoughts and culture, vanish as soon as their servers lose power. Against the scale of deep time, our technologies are like sparks, brilliant but brief. Archaeology teaches us this lesson. By comparison, the oldest stone tools, simple flakes and axes, remain scattered across landscapes after millions of years. But where are the wooden spears, the woven baskets, the garments, the shelters? They were real, essential to survival, but because they were made of organic material, they have almost entirely vanished. Even iron tools, which feel durable in our hands, corrode swiftly when exposed. Unless sealed away in dry or frozen conditions, they collapse into reddish powder. What then will remain of our airplanes, our cars, or our cities in 1,000 centuries? Consider modern concrete. Skyscrapers and highways rely on it, but exposed to the elements, it eventually cracks, weathers, and returns to rubble. Some ancient Roman concrete has survived, but only in select conditions, protected by mineral interactions with seawater. Most modern concrete is less resilient, designed for decades rather than millennia. In a world without humans to maintain it, our infrastructure would begin collapsing within a few centuries. Bridges would fall, towers would topple, and roads would fracture, soon covered by vegetation and soil. Plastics might last longer, but not in recognizable forms. They break down into microplastics, scattering through oceans and sediments. In millions of years, those tiny particles could transform into strange hydrocarbon layers, geological curiosities for future beings to puzzle over. Instead of monuments, our legacy might be plastic dust compressed into stone. The irony is sharp. The material we treat as disposable could be our most enduring signature. Even more ephemeral are our digital creations. Our knowledge, art, and history are increasingly stored not on stone tablets or parchment, but on servers, hard drives, and fragile magnetic tapes. Without constant electricity and maintenance, these records vanish almost instantly. In 1,000 years, unless deliberately preserved, our digital libraries would be gone. A future archaeologist might unearth our cities, but find almost nothing of our stories, our music, or our science. They might know we existed, but not who we truly were. Speculative thinkers extend this logic backward. If another civilization rose millions of years ago, what evidence would survive? Their wooden tools, fabrics, or even metallic machines would vanish quickly. Perhaps, like us, their most precious records were kept in fragile mediums, skins, papers, or digital equivalents. Without deliberate preservation, their culture would dissolve, leaving only ambiguous traces in stone or soil. The lesson is clear. Technological sophistication does not guarantee permanence. Without continuity, even brilliance fades. This fragility explains why we find stone monuments, but rarely anything more advanced in the archaeological record. Stone endures by accident, while metal, wood, and fiber vanish. When we look at sites like Göbekli Tepe, built over 11,000 years ago, we see carved stone pillars, but whatever tools, clothing, or ephemeral technologies those builders used are gone. Perhaps they had knowledge we underestimate, erased by time's indifference. Perhaps the same fate awaits us. For the dreamer listening now, this realization is both unsettling and soothing. It unsettles because it shows how easily our age could disappear, leaving no lasting testament. It soothes because it reminds us that impermanence is universal. Every civilization, no matter how mighty, is fragile against deep time. The earth remembers some things and forgets others, and our control over what remains is far less than we imagine. When we picture the ruins of our world, we often imagine a haunting skyline of skeletal towers jutting above forests or deserts. Yet reality would be far less dramatic. Within a few hundred years, vegetation would overwhelm most cities. Roots would split open pavements, vines would drape over steel, water would seep into foundations, breaking them apart. Insects and microbes would devour wood. Metal beams would weaken under rust. What remains would be rubble, then soil, then perhaps only a subtle rise in the landscape hinting that something once stood there. Take satellites. Today, thousands orbit Earth, transmitting signals that define our age. In just a few centuries, most will fall back, burning in the atmosphere. A handful may survive longer, tumbling in distant orbits, but even they will eventually crash or be reduced to dust. Imagine millions of years into the future, no trace of our satellites, no evidence that Earth was once wrapped in a web of machines. Spacefaring archaeologists might never know this chapter existed. Even our greatest architectural feats, from massive dams to colossal statues, are fragile. Hoover Dam might last thousands of years, but erosion and seismic shifts will eventually undo it. Mount Rushmore could endure for 1 million, but even granite wears away. Wind, rain, and frost conspire patiently. Compared to tectonic cycles and glacial epochs, our monuments are temporary scratches on the surface of stone. The comparison with ancient civilizations deepens the point. Consider the Olmecs. They left behind colossal stone heads, but much of their society vanished into obscurity. Without writing that endured, their history is only partially known. If they had used metals or ephemeral materials, those are long gone. Now scale that forward. In 10,000 years, perhaps only fragments of our stoneworks will endure. Select bridges, carvings, or mountains reshaped by human hands. In 100,000, even those may be dust. This fragility reframes how we think about progress. We measure ourselves by technology, yet the very nature of technology is impermanence. A smartphone, miraculous in its capacity, is useless within years and vanishes without trace within centuries. Vast data centers, the nervous system of our world, require constant energy. The moment that ceases, their memory evaporates. We assume permanence, but in truth, we live in an era of vanishing, where our greatest creations are also the most short-lived. Speculative thinkers ask, if our legacy is so fragile, could other civilizations have risen and disappeared, leaving almost nothing? Perhaps they too built machines, wrote records, and dreamed of eternity, only for time to reduce them to geological oddities, mistaken for natural quirks. The Silurian hypothesis gains weight here. What survives is not the machines, but the chemistry, the faint anomalies hidden in stone. Civilizations might be detectable, not by their artifacts, but by subtle scars in the Earth's memory. For the listener in the quiet of night, this realization carries a meditative calm. If permanence is an illusion, then our striving for eternal monuments is unnecessary. What matters is the moment of creation, the stories we live now, the dreams we leave to one another. Technology is fragile, yes, but so is every human breath, and fragility, rather than diminishing value, may in fact be what gives it meaning. Like sparks in the dark, civilizations blaze, vanish, and give way to others. Perhaps that has happened many times before us. Perhaps it will happen again. Long before writing carved history into clay or stone, stories were carried in voices, around fires, across valleys, on the lips of travelers. Myths preserved fragments of memory too fragile for tools or monuments. While mainstream scholars interpret myths as allegories, moral lessons, or reflections of natural events, others see them as windows distorted, but still open, into forgotten times. Could these stories preserve faint echoes of civilizations long erased? Flood myths are among the most universal, from the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical account of Noah, from Hindu tales of Manu rescued by a great fish to indigenous American legends of waters rising to cleanse the land. Cultures worldwide remember deluges. Mainstream science often links these to post-ice age sea level rise or local catastrophic floods, such as the breaching of glacial lakes. Yet their ubiquity hints at something deeper, a collective memory of upheaval, of lands drowned, of communities scattered. Even if they stem from real events, the consistency across continents suggests that water's power left a mark not only on landscapes, but on human imagination. Golden Age myths are another recurring theme. Greeks told of a time when humans lived in harmony, free of toil and suffering, before decline set in. Hindus described Satya Yuga, the age of truth, followed by eras of gradual decay. In Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztec spoke of successive worlds, each destroyed before the present one began. These cycles of creation and destruction mirror geological rhythms of rise and fall, whether metaphorical or historical. They align with the possibility that civilizations, or at least organized ways of life, have risen and collapsed before. Even myths of giants may carry hidden meaning. Across cultures, from Norse tales of Jotnar to biblical accounts of Nephilim, from Pacific legends to Native American stories, giants stride through memories. Some interpret these as metaphors for natural forces, others as memories of encounters with hominins like Neanderthals or Denisovans. Yet within speculation, they become symbols of forgotten epochs, eras when beings larger, stranger, or older than us walked the earth, leaving stories rather than fossils. What makes myths powerful is not their literal truth, but their persistence. Stories survive where monuments fall. The city of Troy was long considered legend until archaeology proved otherwise. Might other myths, dismissed as fantasy, conceal kernels of forgotten history? Atlantis, Lemuria, Shambhala. These names may be metaphors, yet they resonate because they express a longing for what is lost and a suspicion that memory stretches further back than we admit. Mainstream anthropology frames myths as cultural expressions, shaped by environment, belief, and imagination. Speculative history views them as possible maps, pointing toward real but obscured events. Between the two lies a fertile middle ground, myth as memory, transformed but not entirely severed from truth. Just as dreams mix fragments of reality with symbols, myths may preserve echoes of ancient experiences blurred by time. For listeners drifting into rest, myths remind us that memory is not confined to evidence. It also lives in story, in rhythm, in words passed across generations. And while science seeks proof, imagination seeks meaning. Together, they weave a fabric where myths become more than tales. They become whispers of humanity's forgotten past. Among the most enduring categories of myth are tales of lost lands and vanished peoples. Plato's story of Atlantis is the most famous, but it is not unique. Pacific Island traditions speak of Lemuria-like homelands, swallowed by the sea. Celtic legends recall Leonesse, a fertile kingdom west of Cornwall, now beneath the waves. In Japan, ancient texts describe Kuni no Tokuyo, a land of eternal youth lying beyond the ocean. While mainstream views classify these as symbolic, their persistence across cultures suggests that memories of submerged places may have been woven into legend, retold, until the line between memory and metaphor blurred. Equally striking are myths that describe cyclical destruction. The Aztec codices detail 5 suns, each representing a different world age, destroyed by jaguars, wind, fire, or flood before the present era began. Hindu cosmology envisions vast cycles called yugas, in which truth diminishes until renewal resets the pattern. These mythic rhythms mirror the geological cycles of cataclysms, ice ages, and volcanic winters. Mainstream scholars treat them as reflections of human perception of natural cycles, seasons, floods, celestial events. Yet speculative thinkers ask, could they also encode memories of earlier human ages, civilizations destroyed and reborn? Oral traditions often prove surprisingly accurate. In Australia, Aboriginal stories describe coastlines and islands that were submerged as sea levels rose more than 7,000 years ago. These stories, passed across hundreds of generations, align with geological evidence. If such long memories can persist, might other myths preserve truths far older, truths we have yet to recognize? Perhaps legends of fire-breathing dragons echo encounters with fossil bones. Perhaps tales of gods descending from the sky echo memories of cosmic impacts. The blending of natural and cultural memory makes myths powerful vessels, carrying fragments of reality through time. One myth, especially rich in this duality, is the Tower of Babel. In the biblical account, humanity once shared a single language and sought to build a tower to heaven. Their hubris was punished with confusion and scattering. Scholars read this as an allegory for the diversity of languages or the dangers of arrogance. Yet it also resonates as a parable of collapse, a unified culture undone, leaving only fragments. Many civilizations have experienced similar falls, their cohesion shattered by disaster or discord, their memory carried forward as a cautionary tale. For speculative minds, myths like these are not simply fantasies, but invitations. They suggest that what people chose to remember, whether flood, fire, or fall, was shaped by extraordinary experiences. Where archaeology falls silent, myth speaks, even if in riddles. Where geology erases, imagination preserves. And while myths are not evidence in themselves, they form patterns. When many cultures speak of floods, golden ages, or vanished homelands, those patterns become difficult to ignore. For the listener now, these myths function as gentle bridges between certainty and wonder. They soothe with familiar rhythms, yet open the mind to mystery. They remind us that human beings have always sought to explain their place in a vast, uncertain world, and in doing so, they leave us with a haunting possibility. Perhaps myths are not inventions, but fragile lanterns, carrying light from ages we can no longer see. If myths are lanterns carrying echoes of forgotten times, then their persistence across cultures is a kind of evidence, not of literal events, but of collective memory. Some stories spread independently, born of shared human experience. Others seem almost archetypal, recurring with uncanny similarity across oceans and centuries, as though humanity itself remembers patterns beyond history. Take the myth of fire from the sky. In Greece, Phaethon seizes the chariot of the sun and crashes it, setting the world ablaze. In indigenous North American traditions, fiery serpents descend to punish humanity. In Hindu texts, celestial weapons rain destruction. Mainstream scholars link these tales to the universal awe and fear of lightning, comets, or meteors. Yet speculation wonders if they recall real cosmic impacts, bolides tearing through the atmosphere, explosions like Tunguska in 1908, magnified into myth. If humanity endured such events before written history, the memory may linger only in fire-filled stories. Similarly, myths of great teachers arriving from elsewhere recur worldwide. The Dogon of Mali tell of beings from the star Sirius. The Inca spoke of Viracocha, who emerged after a flood to teach law and agriculture. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl was a feathered serpent deity who brought knowledge before vanishing across the sea. Scholars frame these as symbolic representations of culture bringers, figures embodying wisdom or foreign influence. Yet speculative imagination asks whether they reflect distant encounters with travelers we can no longer explain, whether earthly or beyond. Even creation myths carry intriguing echoes. Many cultures describe the world being shaped from chaos or void, then destroyed and remade multiple times. The Norse told of Ginnungagap, a yawning void between fire and ice, out of which the first beings emerged. The Mayas spoke of gods attempting to fashion humanity several times, each creation failing until the present one. These myths align eerily with modern scientific notions of cycles. Big bangs, extinctions, rebirths, perhaps coincidence, perhaps intuition, or perhaps a memory of civilizations that observed cosmic rhythms long before us. Mainstream science rightly cautions that myths cannot be read as history. They are too symbolic, too mutable, yet they are not random. They preserve what mattered most to those who told them: survival after flood, awe before fire, reverence for teachers, fear of endings. If stories can endure thousands of years, as Aboriginal flood myths demonstrate, then perhaps fragments of truth lie hidden within older tales, waiting to be recognized when evidence aligns. For the listener now, these myths offer more than history or speculation. They provide comfort because they remind us that humanity has always sought meaning in mystery. Long before telescopes or seismographs, people crafted stories to explain the vastness that surrounded them, whether literal or symbolic. These stories are part of our inheritance. They whisper across generations, carrying fragments of memory through darkness. As we close this section, one thought lingers. Myths may not tell us exactly what happened, but they remind us that something happened, something so profound it demanded remembrance, even in symbolic form. In their persistence, myths are less about proving lost civilizations than about preserving wonder, urging us never to forget that our story may be older, stranger, and deeper than we think. When we step back from myths and artifacts, a question rises naturally. What if humanity has not been a single story, but many? What if our presence on Earth is not unique to this age, but part of a cycle, civilizations blooming, collapsing, and vanishing, only to rise again under new skies? Mainstream science insists that Homo sapiens is the first species to achieve technological civilization. Yet deep time and fragile memory leave room for speculation. Perhaps others, like us, lived, thrived, and fell, their stories erased by catastrophe and erosion. Cycles are not foreign to nature. Stars are born, burn, and die, only for new stars to form from their ashes. Forests grow, burn, and regrow. Rivers flood, carve new paths, and retreat. Why should human civilization be exempt from this rhythm? If our known history is but one page of a vast book, could earlier chapters have told the same story: discovery, mastery, decline, long before our own? Consider how quickly we advanced. In just a few thousand years, we went from stone tools to satellites. In only a century, from steam engines to nuclear power. If such rapid leaps are possible now, could they not have been possible before, under different conditions? Perhaps earlier civilizations rose swiftly, only to fall just as swiftly, undone by cataclysm, climate, or internal strife. Their traces may have been too fragile to withstand millions of years, leaving only faint whispers in geology or myth. Speculative thinkers point to the eerie parallels between myths of cycles and geological records. The Aztec five suns, Hindu yugas, or Greek ages of man, all describe civilizations rising and being destroyed. Again and again, science documents extinctions and climate shifts that echo these rhythms. Between them lies a tantalizing possibility. Myths and rocks may be describing the same cycles, one in story, the other in stone. For the listener drifting now, this thought carries both wonder and humility. If civilizations are cyclical, then we are not the pinnacle of a linear ascent, but participants in an ancient rhythm. Others may have stood where we stand, looked at the same stars, and dreamed the same dreams, only for time to erase them. Our story, no matter how dazzling, may also fade, making room for the next. Cycles offer comfort too. They suggest that nothing is ever wholly lost, only transformed, just as forests regrow after fire. Perhaps human creativity renews after collapse. And if so, then even if we are forgotten, humanity or something like it may rise again. We are sparks in a repeating fire, fragile but part of a greater pattern. To imagine cycles of humanity is to step into a hall of mirrors. Each reflection shows a possible age, one of discovery, another of collapse, another of silence. In the mainstream view, only the reflection of our current civilization is real, the rest illusion. Yet history itself suggests repetition. Empires grow confident, stretch too far, fracture, and fade. If this pattern recurs in centuries, why not in millennia or millions of years? Take the Bronze Age collapse as a miniature cycle. Cultures across the Mediterranean reached impressive heights of trade, literacy, and architecture, only to fall into centuries of darkness. Knowledge was lost, then slowly rediscovered. What if this local cycle is a scaled-down version of something far older, repeated across epochs beyond our grasp? The rhythm of rise and fall is woven into history. Perhaps it is woven into prehistory as well. Speculation expands from there. Imagine a civilization not unlike ours, existing a million years ago. They might have tamed fire, mined resources, even built cities of stone and metal. A comet strike, a supervolcano, or a sudden ice age could have destroyed them. Over millions of years, their cities crumbled, metals corroded, and organic materials vanished. Only subtle chemical traces, carbon spikes, odd isotopes remained, indistinguishable from natural events. To us, their existence would be invisible, yet to themselves, they might have felt as advanced as we do now, as permanent, as inevitable. Even within our own story, humanity has experienced near extinctions. The eruption of Toba may have reduced us to a few thousand survivors. Had the catastrophe been slightly worse, we might have vanished, leaving only faint signs of our presence. In that alternate history, another branch of life could have risen, perhaps repeating the cycle of civilization under different forms. Each cycle would leave the next unaware, each convinced it was the first. This cyclical vision changes how we see ourselves. If we are part of a repeating pattern, then our achievements, while meaningful, are not unique. The skyscrapers of New York or the satellites orbiting above us may not be unprecedented. They may be echoes, reenactments of earlier ages erased by time. To mainstream science, this is unlikely. No evidence supports such a claim. But to speculative imagination, the lack of evidence is precisely what makes the idea haunting. The silence invites us to wonder what might lie hidden in its depths. For the listener lying awake, perhaps lulled by the rhythm of this narrative, the thought becomes gentle rather than unsettling. Civilizations cycle, then impermanence is natural, Our fragility is not failure, but participation in a vast rhythm older than memory. Others may have come before, others may come after, and we are one note in the great symphony of Earth's story. Cycles are not only patterns of collapse, but also of renewal. After each dark age in history, light has returned. The fall of Rome gave way to medieval kingdoms, which in turn prepared the soil for the Renaissance. The decline of the Maya left behind cities swallowed by jungle, yet their descendants carried forward traditions that still echo today. Knowledge, once forgotten, has a habit of resurfacing, sometimes centuries later, sometimes in altered forms, but rarely gone forever. If renewal can happen across mere centuries, is it so difficult to imagine it occurring across millions of years? Civilizations may rise and fall like waves, each unaware of the tides that came before. Mainstream historians counter this with caution. They argue that if cycles of advanced humanity had unfolded before us, we should find stronger evidence. Tools, bones, and buildings ought to endure, at least in fragments. And indeed, we do find stone tools, cave art, and bones of earlier hominins. Yet here lies the paradox. The simplest technologies survive best, while the most advanced dissolve fastest. Stone endures, but metals corrode. Ceramics can last, but fabrics disintegrate. Electronics, plastics, and digital memory, our proudest achievements, are among the most fragile of all. It is possible that what vanishes most quickly is also what best defines a civilization's peak. This paradox invites speculation. If an earlier age of humanity, something very much like humanity, had reached its own technological height, the traces might have been scattered or erased within tens of thousands of years. After millions, almost nothing would remain. A great city might collapse into rubble within centuries, return to soil within millennia, and be subducted into Earth's crust within geological ages. The silence in the record does not guarantee absence. It guarantees only that survival is rare. Ancient myths reinforce this sense of repetition. Hindu cosmology describes yugas, vast cycles of creation and destruction, each fading into the next. The Aztecs believed our present world was the fifth in a succession of suns, each destroyed by jaguars, wind, fire, or flood. Norse legends told of Ragnarok, the end of one order and the rebirth of another. To scholars, these cycles symbolize nature's rhythms, seasons, storms, celestial motions. But to speculative minds, they may encode faint echoes of civilizations remembered dimly, their endings transformed into mythic allegories. Philosophically, cyclical history softens the fear of finality. If humanity is the only civilization to rise, then our extinction feels absolute, a permanent silence. But if we are part of a repeating pattern, then collapse is not final. It is simply a pause before renewal. Just as forests regrow after fire, just as rivers carve new channels after floods, perhaps civilizations bloom again and again, each one brief but meaningful. For the listener lying in the quiet of night, this thought brings a strange comfort. It suggests that fragility is not failure, but participation in a larger rhythm. Others may have come before, others may come after, and our role is one moment in a symphony that spans eons. The earth does not cling to permanence. It dances through cycles, and perhaps humanity, too, is part of that dance. If civilizations truly follow cycles, the question becomes, where are we within that rhythm? Are we the first, breaking new ground never tread before, or the latest in a line of forgotten ages? Mainstream science leans toward the former, pointing to the absence of undeniable evidence for past advanced societies. Yet the silence of the record leaves room for possibility, and within that silence, imagination thrives. Speculative thinkers suggest that cycles may be hidden by time itself. Imagine a civilization reaching its peak. 1 million years ago, they might have built cities, cultivated landscapes, even reached for the stars. Yet, in the span of deep time, their achievements could have vanished. Sedimentation would bury their works. Tectonic plates would recycle their cities into magma. Climate and erosion would erase their roads and monuments. All that might remain is a faint anomaly in chemical layers, carbon spikes, strange isotopes, easily mistaken for natural events. In this way, the traces of civilizations could lie hidden in plain sight, unrecognized because we are not trained to see them as artificial. Cycles also raise the question of memory and amnesia. If civilizations have risen before, why do we not remember them? Perhaps fragments survive in myth, the stories of golden ages, great floods, and lost worlds. Perhaps ritual, symbolism, and architecture carry echoes of older knowledge, reshaped and passed on without context. Just as the myth of Troy was dismissed as fantasy until ruins were found, the myths may await their confirmation. In this sense, memory is not lost, but transformed, carried forward in forms we overlook. Another possibility is that cycles differ in scale. Some civilizations may have been small and local, rising to brilliance, but never spanning the globe. Their traces might be buried beneath jungles, deserts, or seas, mistaken for natural formation. Others may have reached heights equal to or beyond ours, only to collapse so completely that their legacy dissolved. Each cycle, large or small, would leave behind survivors who rebuilt, carrying fragments of memory that became myth. In this way, the rhythm of history is less a straight line than a spiral, circling back while also moving forward. For us, imagining cycles changes our perspective. It reminds us that permanence is an illusion, that civilizations are fragile, and that our achievements, though dazzling, may not outlast deep time. Yet it also offers hope. Even if our age fades, life and culture will continue. Another humanity, or something like it, may one day rise, look at the stars, and ask the same questions. We are not the end, but part of an ongoing rhythm older than memory. For the listener drifting now, this vision can be a lullaby. Our fragility does not diminish us. It binds us to something greater. Whether first or fifth, whether unique or recurring, our story belongs to the Earth's endless cycles. We are not alone in time. We are part of its dance, repeating yet always new. If earlier civilizations did rise and vanish, what signs would remain? Mainstream science argues that artifacts would be scarce, but not impossible. Geological processes are efficient at erasure, yet not perfect. The question becomes, what clues might endure through deep time, leaving us faint hints of forgotten ages? One possibility lies in unusual mineral deposits. Civilizations require resources, metals for tools, fuels for energy, and stone for building. Large-scale mining alters landscapes in ways nature rarely does. We see this in our own world. Vast pits from copper extraction, scars from coal mining, mountains reshaped for iron. Over millions of years, these excavations would weather and erode, yet traces might remain in abnormal mineral distributions. A future geologist might puzzle over why copper or rare earth elements were concentrated in strange, unnatural patterns. Another enduring sign could be chemical anomalies. Our burning of fossil fuels is already leaving a detectable fingerprint, a sharp spike in atmospheric carbon dioxide, recorded in ice cores and sediments. Even if no cities or machines survived, that chemical layer might persist for millions of years, resembling other abrupt shifts in Earth's past. Similarly, our use of synthetic chemicals, plastics, pesticides, industrial compounds, could leave traces as unusual molecular residues compressed into stone. Though degraded, their patterns might stand out as signals of technological activity. Nuclear activity could leave an even stranger legacy. Weapons testing and reactor accidents scatter isotopes that do not occur naturally in large amounts. While many of these decay, their daughter products endure. If an earlier civilization had split the atom, faint isotopic anomalies might still exist in geological layers. Mainstream scientists note that natural nuclear reactions, like those once active at Oklo in Gabon, can produce similar signatures, yet the possibility remains. If artificial isotopes were found, distinguishing natural from technological origins would be difficult. Even architecture itself might leave faint echoes. Our skyscrapers will not endure, but certain stone constructions could carved bedrock, reshaped landscapes, or vast earthworks may resist total erasure. Consider the Nazca Lines, visible for millennia because of the desert's stability, or the Great Wall of China, whose remnants may last for tens of thousands of years. If earlier civilizations built on similarly monumental scales, subtle traces might still lie hidden beneath forests or deserts, waiting to be discovered. Still, ambiguity defines all such evidence. Mining scars might be mistaken for unusual geology. Carbon spikes might be attributed to volcanic eruptions. Isotopes could be dismissed as natural anomalies. Stone carvings could be seen as random fractures or erosion. The further back in time we search, the greater the uncertainty becomes. For speculative thinkers, this uncertainty is the very heart of the mystery. We already know Earth's history is filled with sudden shifts, extinctions, and anomalies. Could some of those have been shaped, in part, by forgotten hands? Perhaps what we see as natural scars are blended with the faint, nearly invisible fingerprints of civilizations erased. The record may not tell us outright, but it leaves enough ambiguity for wonder. For the listener resting now, these possibilities invite a gentle kind of curiosity. Instead of demanding answers, they suggest questions, quiet ones, that linger like stars at the edge of sight. What traces might we leave? What might we already have overlooked? In contemplating the signs that could remain, we see not only the fragility of memory, but the resilience of mystery. If the ruins of earlier civilizations are nearly impossible to find, perhaps we should turn our gaze to the subtler marks, those written not in stone blocks, but in the language of the Earth itself. Mainstream scientists already read Earth's layers as a chronicle, extracting meaning from isotopes, fossils, and sediments. Within that record are anomalies that spark debate. Some, like the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, are explained as natural events. Yet for speculative thinkers, such anomalies become questions. What if they were traces not of geology alone, but of civilization? One category of evidence might be fossilized waste. Humanity today produces billions of tons of refuse annually. Plastics, metals, ceramics, all are dispersed across landfills, oceans, and soils. Over millions of years, most will degrade, but compressed layers of unusual debris could fossilize. Imagine a seam of rock, millions of years from now, peppered with tiny synthetic fragments and odd mineral composites, unlike any natural deposit. A future geologist might hold such a fragment and wonder at its origin, just as we puzzle over enigmatic artifacts today. Another enduring sign could come from agriculture itself. Farming reshapes landscapes on a massive scale, terracing mountainsides, redirecting rivers, enriching or depleting soils. All these leave imprints. Today, vast regions of the Amazon reveal terra preta, dark earth, enriched with nutrients, evidence of ancient cultivation. If our own agricultural marks endure, they may confuse future scientists into wondering why certain soils are naturally fertile. If earlier civilizations practiced large-scale agriculture, perhaps similar anomalies already lie beneath our feet, mistaken for quirks of nature. The oceans, too, may preserve traces. Rising sea levels already cover coastal cities, burying them beneath silt and waves. In time, these could fossilize into strange seabed patterns, rectilinear foundations, or artificial canals hidden beneath sediments. Today, sonar occasionally reveals unusual structures on the ocean floor, many dismissed as natural formations, but the ambiguity leaves room for speculation. Might some be remnants of forgotten ages drowned when seas rose after ice ages or other cataclysm? Mainstream geology insists that extraordinary evidence would be required to confirm such ideas, and none has yet been found. But the absence of certainty is itself fertile ground for imagination. A peculiar layer of soil, an unexplained chemical spike, a formation that seems too regular. These become doorways to wonder. If we were to vanish, these are the kinds of signs we would leave behind. Subtle, debatable, open to interpretation. Why assume the same has not already occurred? For those listening now, drifting toward rest, the thought is gentle rather than alarming. Perhaps the greatest legacy of civilizations is not monuments or machines, but questions. Questions encoded in anomalies, waiting for someone to look closer. Questions that may never be answered, but still invite reflection. If we find no clear signs of predecessors, we are left with wonder. If we one day uncover faint evidence, we are left with awe. In either case, the mystery remains intact. And so, the signs that might remain are not just physical, they are philosophical. They remind us that certainty is rare, that humility is essential, and that imagination fills the spaces where knowledge ends. Whether we are the first or the latest in a cycle, we walk upon a planet that remembers more than it reveals. And in that silence, there may still be whispers waiting to be heard. When we reflect on forgotten civilizations, we often focus on what the Earth erases, yet there is another eraser, equally powerful and perhaps more immediate: the human mind. We are creatures of memory, but memory is fragile. Entire cultures can vanish not only because monuments crumble, but because stories fade, languages die, and knowledge fails to pass from one generation to the next. This amnesia of time shapes history just as surely as geology does. Think of how quickly details can be lost. Within a few generations, even significant events can be reduced to myth, distorted, or simplified until only a faint echo remains. Wars remembered as legends, kings remembered as gods, disasters remembered as divine punishment. Written history resists this erosion, but only partially. Libraries burn, texts decay, and languages themselves fall into obscurity. Without constant renewal, knowledge disappears. What is left behind is a patchwork of fragments, stitched together by imagination. On a global scale, the human record is astonishingly brief. 5,000 years of writing, a few millennia more of oral traditions preserved with varying accuracy, compared to the hundreds of thousands of years humans have walked the earth. This is a sliver. Most of our ancestors' lives are beyond our knowing. Their fears, joys, discoveries, and failures are largely invisible to us. If such amnesia occurs within our own species, why should we not imagine deeper amnesia across millions of years, where entire civilizations might have been forgotten? Mainstream psychology shows that memory itself is malleable. Individual memories change subtly each time they are recalled. Over centuries, collective memory follows similar patterns. Stories are retold, reshaped to suit cultural needs, and altered until they serve more as symbols than as history. Myths of floods, fires, or golden ages may have begun as recollections of real events, but in being repeated, they became allegory. Truth blurs into metaphor. The memory is not gone, but its meaning is obscured. This fragility also explains why myths carry patterns rather than details. The universality of flood myths may signal an ancient memory of rising seas, but no myth preserves names, dates, or precise descriptions. The event becomes archetype. In this way, human amnesia strips away the specific, leaving only the essential. Civilizations may fall, but the memory of disaster, of renewal, of cycles, these survive as themes that echo across cultures. For those listening tonight, drifting between wakefulness and sleep, this realization carries a gentle weight. Forgetting is not failure. It is the nature of time. Our minds are rivers, carrying fragments forward while others sink. The same is true for humanity as a whole. If civilizations came before, we may carry faint memories of them without realizing, shadows of stories, archetypes of myth, symbols we cannot trace. The human mind forgets, yet in forgetting, it leaves room for wonder. Amnesia does not only happen at the scale of individuals or families, it occurs across whole civilizations. Languages vanish, sometimes in less than a century, leaving behind inscriptions no one can read. Of the thousands of tongues spoken throughout history, only a fraction survive today, and many of those are endangered. When a language dies, a worldview dies with it. Myths, histories, and knowledge bound to that language often dissolve too. The amnesia of time is not just geological, it is cultural. woven into the fragile medium of human memory itself. One striking example is the Indus Valley civilization. They left behind cities with advanced planning, drainage, and trade networks, yet their script remains undeciphered. Without translation, their voices are silent. We know they lived, we know they thrived, but we do not know their stories. A civilization can rise to great heights and still be forgotten if memory fails to carry forward its words. If such amnesia can occur in 5,000 years, how much more could be erased in 5 million? Even within literate societies, the record is precarious. The Library of Alexandria, often romanticized as the greatest repository of ancient knowledge, was destroyed through fire and neglect. Countless works of science, history, and philosophy were lost forever. Today we remember only fragments, preserved by chance in other libraries or copied into other languages. History is shaped not only by what survives, but by what does not. This selective survival creates distortions. Periods we call dark ages may simply be eras where memory was erased. Psychologists describe human memory as constructive rather than archival. We do not retrieve the past intact. We rebuild it each time, filling gaps with imagination. On the scale of cultures, this means that memory drifts like sand dunes, reshaping, shifting, sometimes erasing what came before. Legends of floods or golden ages may be reconstructions of distant events, altered until they no longer resemble their source. In this way, memory and amnesia intertwine, producing myths that feel eternal, but are rooted in forgotten truths. Speculative thinkers extend this to humanity as a whole. If civilizations existed long before us, perhaps fragments of their stories survive in distorted myths, symbols, or rituals. The archetypes of renewal, destruction, and rebirth that recur in global myths could be the faintest traces of real cycles carried forward through countless generations, blurred until their origin is unrecognizable. Memory, in this sense, may outlast stone, even if altered beyond clarity. For listeners resting now, the thought is calming as well as humbling. It shows that forgetting is not failure, it is natural. The earth forgets through erosion, but so do we, through silence and change. Our own civilization may one day be forgotten, remembered only in fragments, misinterpreted by those who come after. And yet, forgetting does not diminish the meaning of our stories. Instead, it makes the present precious. If amnesia is inevitable, then the memories we create now, our songs, our words, our shared moments, are lanterns burning brightly in the night, however brief their glow. If Earth's memory is fragile, what of other worlds? When we look beyond our planet, we find neighbors that might also have carried civilizations, whether of humans, ancestors, or entirely different beings. Mars, Venus, and countless exoplanets whisper possibilities. Their silence may not prove absence, but rather the same deep amnesia we face on Earth. Erosion, catastrophe, and time working together to erase almost everything. Mars is the most enduring candidate for speculation. Dry, red, and barren today, it carries scars of a wetter past. Channels cut into its surface resemble river valleys. Ancient lake beds dot its plains. Minerals point to the presence of long-gone oceans. Billions of years ago, Mars may have supported life. Mainstream science stops cautiously at microbes, but speculation stretches further. If Mars once hosted not just life, but civilizations, their traces could now lie buried under dunes, hidden beneath dust storms that have swept the planet for eons. The famous face on Mars, a mesa in the Cydonia region, turned out to be a natural formation when viewed in higher resolution. Yet the fascination it inspired reveals our readiness to imagine civilizations in alien landscapes, even without pyramids or statues. The possibility remains. If cultures once thrived there, time has erased nearly all. Venus tells another story. Today, it is a world of searing heat and crushing pressure, its surface hot enough to melt lead. But models suggest it may once have had oceans, clouds, and a climate not unlike Earth's. If that is true, then Venus may have been habitable for billions of years before turning hostile. In those ancient seas, Could life have flourished? Could civilizations have risen and then perished? As the planet spiraled into greenhouse catastrophe, we may never know, because Venus is now a world of ruin, its surface resurfaced by volcanic activity that erased almost all ancient features. If ruins existed, they are gone, melted into stone by the planet's rage. The idea of a Venusian past is sobering. Even a world that might once have been Eden can become a furnace that forgets its history. Beyond our solar system, the possibilities multiply. Astronomers have discovered thousands of exoplanets, some in their stars' habitable zones. On many of these, liquid water could exist. If Earth can birth civilizations, why not others? Yet across such distances, we see only faint signals, shadows of planets passing in front of stars, hints of atmospheric chemistry. We cannot yet know whether these worlds host forests, oceans, or ruins, but speculation stretches into the cosmic silence. Perhaps civilizations rise everywhere, repeatedly, only to fall, leaving behind ghost planets where traces are long gone. If deep time erases on Earth, then how much more thoroughly does it erase across the cosmos? The Fermi paradox sharpens the question. If civilizations are possible and plentiful, why do we not see them? One answer is that civilizations may not endure. They may rise and collapse, erased before their signals can travel far. Another is that they leave marks too subtle for us to detect. Chemical scars in atmospheres, isotopic anomalies in soils, faint irregularities we mistake for natural. Just as we might miss traces of forgotten civilizations on Earth, so might we overlook them on distant planets. For the listener resting now, these cosmic musings widen the horizon. They remind us that forgetting is not unique to humanity. It may be the nature of the universe. Civilizations may bloom and vanish like stars themselves, leaving behind mystery rather than memory. If Earth holds secrets we cannot see, then so too might Mars, Venus, and the billions of worlds beyond. If Earth's story teaches us that civilizations can be fragile, then extending that lesson to the cosmos suggests a sobering vision. Perhaps countless worlds have carried their own ages of culture, only to lose them to time. Mars and Venus may be local examples, but the Milky Way itself, with its billions of stars and trillions of planets, almost demands that others have risen before. The silence we perceive may not mean they never existed. It may mean their traces have already been erased. Some researchers frame this idea within the concept of ghost civilizations. These would be cultures whose existence cannot be proven because the evidence has been obliterated. On Earth, we imagine them swallowed by tectonic plates or dissolved in floods. On other planets, they might be buried beneath ice, melted into lava, or crushed under atmospheric change. Ghost civilizations may not be visible even with advanced telescopes, for their ruins are not gleaming towers but faint anomalies. Chemistry, topography, or patterns that do not quite match natural processes. Mars again offers an instructive example. Its surface, battered by meteorites and storms, may hide what lies beneath. One day, drilling miles under its crust, explorers might find fossils or artifacts preserved in sheltered pockets. Until then, all we can do is wonder. Venus, meanwhile, tempts imagination with the possibility that beneath its hostile present, an inane prehistory is sealed away, unreachable through its thick clouds and punishing heat. If civilizations once thrived there, their memory is locked behind a wall of fire. Exoplanets multiply the intrigue. Many orbit in habitable zones where liquid water could flow, yet habitable does not guarantee permanent stability. Planets wobble in their orbits, stars flare with deadly radiation, climates shift dramatically. A civilization could flourish for hundreds of thousands of years, long enough to build monuments and map stars, only to vanish when conditions turned against it. Millions of years later, telescopes like ours would see only a lifeless sphere, unaware of the dramas that once unfolded there. Each such planet becomes a reminder that life, even intelligent life, may be common, but endurance may be rare. The Fermi paradox captures the tension. If life is abundant, why do we not see evidence? One speculative answer is that civilizations are temporary. Their signals do not persist long enough to overlap. If humanity broadcasts radio waves for only a few centuries, then falls silent, the chance of another civilization hearing us across the void is slim. Multiply this across the galaxy, and civilizations may be like fireflies blinking briefly in an endless night, each unaware of the others. For speculative thinkers, this view reframes the cosmos. Instead of a galaxy teeming with visible neighbors, it may be filled with ruins, civilizations erased, leaving behind only subtle legacies. Perhaps some of the anomalies astronomers detect, odd chemical ratios, unexplained heat signatures, are echoes of past ages. Yet, without context, we dismiss them as natural quirks. Just as we might overlook traces of lost civilizations on Earth, we may already be overlooking them in the stars. For listeners drifting deeper into rest, this perspective is oddly soothing. It suggests that we are part of a universal rhythm: creation, flourishing, collapse, forgetting. We are not alone in our fragility. It may be the rule, not the exception. If civilizations bloom like flowers across the galaxy, each destined to fade, then our story is shared, even if we never meet the others. The silence of space becomes less lonely, more like a vast memory, where countless voices once spoke, now softened into whispers we cannot quite hear. And so, when we gaze at Mars, Venus, or distant exoplanets, we may be looking not at empty worlds, but at cemeteries of time. Ghost civilizations may be everywhere, erased by fire, ice, or silence. To wonder about them is not to despair, but to recognize our place in a universe where memory is fleeting and mystery endures. Speculation about lost civilizations can be captivating, but part of what makes it meaningful is balance. To keep the dream alive, we must also listen to the voice of caution, the perspective of mainstream science. For while imagination opens possibilities, evidence demands rigor. Without this balance, every rock becomes a monument, every anomaly proof of a forgotten empire. Skepticism reminds us that absence of evidence is not itself evidence of presence. One of the strongest counterpoints lies in the fossil record. Despite its gaps, it is more complete than we sometimes assume. We have found fossilized leaves, delicate insects, and even imprints of raindrops millions of years old. If entire civilizations had existed, some argue, surely we would find clearer evidence, tools, bones, or structures. The fact that we have not suggests that no such civilizations existed before ours. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, and without it, science remains cautious. Another cautionary point concerns the rarity of preservation. Fossilization is not common. It requires exceptional conditions. Most organic material decays, most artifacts corrode, and most structures crumble. This explains why so much of human prehistory is invisible. Yet it also means that the absence of evidence is difficult to interpret. If preservation is rare, then expecting civilizations millions of years old to survive is unrealistic. From this perspective, the silence of the record is not mysterious. It is inevitable. Mainstream scholars also highlight the principle of parsimony. When we encounter anomalies, grooved spheres, odd chemical spikes, or unexplained ruins, it is more reasonable to assume natural causes first. Geology produces strange formations. Erosion shapes rocks into unexpected forms. Chemical imbalances often result from volcanic activity or climate shifts. To leap immediately to lost civilization risks ignoring simpler, testable explanations. Skepticism insists that the burden of proof lies with the extraordinary claim. There is also the issue of false positives. Throughout history, people have mistaken natural or recent objects for ancient mysteries. Nails in coal seams, later explained as contamination. The face on Mars revealed as an ordinary mesa. These examples teach caution. Without strict standards of evidence, speculation risks turning into illusion, projecting patterns where none exist. Science demands more replication, verification, and testable hypotheses. Yet even as mainstream science warns against overreach, it does not deny mystery. Researchers acknowledge the incompleteness of the record. the fragility of memory, and the reality of catastrophic resets. Their caution does not close the door on speculation. It simply asks us to tread carefully. The dream remains alive, but grounded. By holding skepticism in one hand and imagination in the other, we build trust in the journey, even if the destination remains unknown. Another important counterpoint comes from archaeological context. Human history, though brief on geological timescales, leaves a dense trail from cave paintings to pottery shards, from bone tools to burial sites. Evidence of our species stretches back hundreds of thousands of years. Even the earliest stone flakes are identifiable as tools, distinct from natural fractures. If advanced civilizations had existed millions of years ago, we might expect to find at least a few unmistakable remnants. That we do not, skeptics argue, is telling. Mainstream geology also stresses the selectivity of the record. While fossils and artifacts survive, they are vanishingly rare compared to the vastness of time. Consider that dinosaurs thrived for over 160 million years, yet our knowledge of them comes from scattered bones and impressions, often incomplete. If creatures so widespread left only fragments, how much less might a short-lived civilization leave? From this view, the silence is not suspicious. It is consistent with what we know about preservation. There is also the issue of extraordinary claims. Science builds on verifiable, testable evidence. When claims arise about anomalous artifacts or ancient ruins, they are evaluated within strict frameworks. Many so-called out-of-place artifacts are eventually explained: erosion, misidentification, or contamination. This does not mean they are uninteresting, only that the bar for rewriting history is necessarily high. Skeptics argue that to preserve credibility, we must separate wonder from wishful thinking. Furthermore, science emphasizes the importance of natural explanations. Unusual isotopes can be produced by volcanic eruptions. Carbon spikes may come from methane releases or asteroid impacts. Strange formations like the Yonaguni Monument can result from natural fracturing. Before attributing anomalies to lost civilizations, researchers seek geological or biological causes. More often than not, those causes prove sufficient. This insistence on natural explanations is not closed-mindedness. It is the discipline that allows science to correct itself and build trust. And yet, acknowledging these counterpoints does not erase the allure of the unknown. If anything, skepticism heightens it by setting a high bar for proof. Science ensures that what remains unexplained is truly mysterious. The balance between caution and imagination is delicate, but essential. Without imagination, we dismiss possibilities. Without skepticism, we risk illusion. Together, they frame a narrative that is both credible and captivating. For the listener in the quiet of night, this balance offers reassurance. The dream of forgotten civilizations is not dismissed, it is tempered. Science teaches humility, reminding us that knowledge must be earned, not assumed. At the same time, it leaves room for wonder, acknowledging the vastness of time and the limits of evidence. Between skepticism and speculation lies a space where trust and curiosity coexist. And in that space, the mystery remains alive. As our journey draws toward its close, we return gently from the vastness of speculation to the quiet rhythm of the present moment. You are here, listening, breathing, resting, while stories of forgotten ages drift around you like constellations. We have explored fossils and myths, cataclysms and possibilities, Mars and Venus, and the fragile record of memory. Now we step back, tapering into stillness, to reflect on what it all means. Perhaps humanity has indeed risen only once. Perhaps we are unique, a singular bloom in Earth's long history that in itself is extraordinary. In 4.5 billion years, through countless cycles of fire and flood, one species learned to carve symbols, build cities, and gaze at the stars with wonder. To be first is no less miraculous than to be the latest in a long succession. The silence of the record may mean not that others came before, but that we are the pioneers of memory, the first storytellers on this ancient stage. And yet, even if that is true, Earth still holds infinite mysteries. Oceans cover most of our planet, and much of their depths remain unexplored. Forests conceal ruins, still waiting to be uncovered. Deserts hide forgotten roads, while mountains shelter caves that no light has touched. Every year, archaeology surprises us with discoveries that shift what we thought we knew. Each surprise is a reminder, even within the narrow span of human history, much is hidden, much is forgotten, and much is still to come. The dream of forgotten ages, then, is not only about the past, but also about our place in the present. It teaches humility. It reminds us that civilizations are fragile, that permanence is an illusion, and that the earth selects what it remembers. But it also offers comfort to imagine ourselves part of a larger cycle, whether we are the first or the thousandth, connects us to something vast, something ongoing. Our story is not isolated. It belongs to the rhythm of life itself. For the listener resting now, these reflections become a lullaby. Your life, with its struggles and triumphs, its worries and hopes, is one thread in a tapestry woven across eons. Whether or not forgotten civilizations ever existed, the mystery they represent belongs to all of us. It is the mystery of existence itself, the knowledge that we live briefly on a planet older than imagination, beneath stars older still. In that immensity, we are both small and significant, fleeting and eternal. And so, as you drift deeper into rest, hold this thought close. The earth remembers in silence. Its stones carry memories we cannot read. Its oceans cradle secrets we cannot reach. Its skies have witnessed stories we cannot retell. Even in silence, the earth holds more than we ever will. To wonder about forgotten ages is not to chase ghosts, but to honor that silence, to recognize that mystery is part of the gift of being alive. Imagine, for a moment, the quiet of deep time. Mountains rise, erode, and rise again. Oceans spread and retreat. Forests bloom, burn, and return in new forms. Against this rhythm, even civilizations are brief, whether humanity is the first to look at the stars or only the latest. Our story is a flicker compared to the Earth's long memory. Yet that flicker is no less luminous. It matters because it is ours and because it joins the chorus of all that has ever lived. Skeptics remind us that we lack proof of forgotten civilizations, and they are right to do so. But mystery does not require certainty. Mystery thrives in the spaces between knowledge and imagination. When we listen to myths of floods, or when we hold a shard of ancient pottery in our hands, we connect with the awareness that much has been lost. The possibility that even more lies hidden, whether in stone, in ocean depths, or in memory itself, offers comfort rather than fear. It tells us that the world is richer than we can ever fully know. This is the gift of the dream of forgotten ages. It humbles us without diminishing us. To imagine that others may have come before does not make our achievements less. It makes them part of a greater rhythm. And if no one has come before, then our responsibility deepens. We are the custodians of memory, the first voices to rise in a silence that stretched for billions of years. Either way, our place is meaningful. Think of the civilizations we know: Sumer, Egypt, the Maya, the Indus Valley. Each left ruins that whisper across time. Yet even they are young compared to Earth itself. Their endurance reassures us that memory is possible, even if incomplete. If we are forgotten, others may one day wonder about us as we wonder about them. This continuity of asking, imagining, remembering is itself a kind of immortality. For you, listening now, the thought may bring rest. Whatever you carry tonight, your anxieties, your unfinished tasks, your questions, they are small compared to the span of eons, yet precious because they belong to this moment. You are part of humanity's story, and humanity's story is part of Earth's, and Earth's story belongs to the stars. Whether you are the first or the thousandth to dream these dreams, you belong to the rhythm that endures beyond memory. And so, as your thoughts grow quieter, let the mystery become comfort. The earth remembers in silence. The stones hold secrets. The ocean's cradle whispers. The skies shimmer with forgotten echoes. You do not need to solve the riddle tonight. You need only to rest in its presence. As you breathe, know that you are part of something vast, something ongoing, something beautiful in its impermanence.